You slept 7 hours last night, maybe even 8, but you still woke up exhausted. That's not a sleep quantity problem. That is a clear sleep quality problem. And it's contributed to by a couple specific habits that have the power to drain your recovery every single night. I've worked with over 100 different clients on this to help them optimize their sleep, their recovery, their energy, and I'm gonna walk you through the 7 biggest factors or biggest habits that will silently drain your energy and destroy your recovery at night. And as I go through, I'm gonna rank all 7 of them using a ranking system that I call the energy drain. Yellow is a level 1 drain. It's real, it's manageable, but it's very fixable. Orange is a level 2 drain. And if it goes unchecked for too long, it can lead to serious damage in your body that most people just overlook. And red is level 3. These I call silent destroyers. These have the power to completely destroy your recovery every single night. And these are also ones that many people overlook. As we go through, I'm also gonna give you one fix for each of them. So let's get into it. Mistake number 7 is something you've probably heard about. It's eating too close to your bedtime. When you get in bed and you're getting ready to go to sleep, there are a couple key processes that are taking place in your body. One is that your body temperature needs to drop in order to fall into a deep sleep. The other is that your body is gonna allocate blood flow to your brain to help with repair and removal of toxin buildup that happens throughout the day. Both of those are disrupted when you eat too close to your bedtime. When you eat and you kick in digestion, your body temperature ends up raising. So that's a clear contrast to your body temperature trying to drop to get you into a deeper sleep. At the same time, your body then diverts blood flow to your stomach and your digestive system in order to process and metabolize the food you ate. Now that's blood flow that would normally be going to your brain to help you clear out the toxins and wake up feeling refreshed. On top of that, when you're sleeping and recovering, your body's gonna elevate growth hormone to help with repair and stimulate true recovery. The problem is when you release insulin because you ate, it drops the growth hormone. So that's a huge factor in lack of recovery. Even my clients that are super busy with work, they have multiple kids, they have a busy family life, they end up eating at 7:30 and then trying to go to bed at 10. It's not enough time. The fix here is to try and shift that last meal, your dinner, earlier in the day. And if that's not possible just due to schedule, then I would at least try to keep it a light meal. It might sound ridiculous, but one of the best late night snacks is actually sauerkraut because it's extremely low in calories, so it doesn't take a lot to digest. It's also loaded with probiotics, those beneficial microbes that are especially active in your microbiome at night. The bottom line is eating too close to your bedtime is a level 1 energy drain. Mistake number 6 is screen time in bed. And I get it, you've heard this one too. Don't look at blue lights or screens before you go to bed. It's a lot easier said than done. But here's where most people have this wrong. It's not just about the blue light. And quite frankly, that one's easily fixable if you get a pair of blue light blocking glasses. The real issue for most people, especially some of the high performers I work with, is stimulation. It's the fact that you're checking email, you're getting stuff done right up until you go to sleep. And sometimes that's forced upon you because you have to deal with kids and get them to sleep first and then wrap up work. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this stimulation keeps hormones like cortisol and adrenaline elevated, which are counterintuitive to your body trying to wind down to fall asleep. You already know that melatonin is one of your main sleep hormones, but you probably don't know that melatonin and cortisol have a hard time coexisting. If melatonin is high, cortisol is likely going to be low, but if cortisol is high, melatonin is going to be low. So more so than just the device and trying to cut out blue light, it's the content or the activity that you're engaging in. Stressful social media content or work are probably the 2 biggest contributors to this stimulation at night. The ultimate fix for this is actually just to keep your phone and other technology out of your bedroom entirely. Think of your bedroom like a sanctuary for your body's recovery. This is another level 1 energy drain. Mistake number 5 is an irregular sleep schedule. This is one that surprises most people because it can really throw you off. You're probably already aware that your body operates in a daily circadian rhythm, but you might not be aware about how significantly this is thrown off when you have nights during the week where you stay up late or even on the weekends and then you end up sleeping in certain days. There's actually a term that researchers use for this that they call social jet lag. And it's one of the most consistent energy drainers that I see among high performing professionals and busy parents. Even if there were one day per week that you stay up till 1 a.m. on a Friday and then sleep in till 9 a.m. on a Saturday, you've shifted your circadian rhythm by 2 time zones. The fix here is pretty simple. Try to pick an hour window that you always go to sleep in and an hour window that you always wake up in. And here's a key point. Even if there's a night or two that you stay up too late during the week or on the weekends, you want to try and wake up at the same time because that wake time is the anchor for the entire rest of the day. You might feel more exhausted, but that's actually going to do a better job protecting your circadian rhythm. This one is a level 2 energy drain. Sleep connects directly to your metabolism, to fat loss, to energy. It's one of 4 pillars that I work on with every single client. So if you're watching this and you're trying to optimize for any of those, then subscribe to the channel because that's what the vast majority of my content revolves around. And if you're somebody that wants more help to figure out which habits are costing you most or which ones to invest your energy on, I put a link in the description below and you can use it to apply for a free consultation. Now back to the list. Mistake number 4 is having no wind down protocol. This one goes hand in hand with mistake number 2, but it has a few key nuances. We've already talked about cortisol, and your body naturally starts to ramp up cortisol production at roughly 4 a.m. And that's the process that naturally wakes you up. Now, this same process happens in reverse when you're trying to go to sleep. The challenge here is if you've been working on a screen or running hot the entire day, chances are you're going to have a higher baseline of cortisol than the average person. That leads you to something that I call the cortisol cliff. And this is a common theme that I see with some of the busiest professionals and parents I work with, is that their cortisol is operating so hot that even when they don't look at screens or do work an hour before bedtime, they have a hard time shutting their mind off. Now, there are a couple different fixes here depending on the situation. The first thing I want to flag is it can be really helpful to have a wind down routine before bed. So this might involve light stretching, it might involve reading, it could involve prayer, you could have a hot shower. But when you spend time actively down regulating your nervous system, it makes it significantly easier for you to fall and stay asleep. 2 of the solutions that I see working best for clients are either hot showers before you get into bed or magnesium supplementation. Because when you are running hot and your cortisol is high, you burn through a ton of magnesium, which you need to relax and fall asleep. A lack of a wind down routine and the cortisol cliff that comes with it, that's a level 2 energy drain. Mistake number 3 is another one that surprises people, and it's one that hits home personally because it's something my wife and I are always bickering about, and it's room temperature. Research consistently points to somewhere between 65 and 68 degrees for optimal sleeping temperature. Now, if you're like me, you might love sleeping in the cold. Your body sort of intuitively knows this, but there are a lot of people out there, my wife included, that will turn the thermostat up to 75. They want to feel nice and cozy. This might feel good, but it disrupts your recovery for the same reason we talked about in mistake number 1, which is that your body temperature has to drop a few degrees in order for you to fall and stay asleep and get deep recovery. So the warm temperature might help you fall unconscious, but it might actually prevent recovery. The fix here is pretty straightforward. You probably want to turn your bedroom temperature down to 67 or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And if your partner likes it warmer, make sure you have a good comforter that they can use to bundle up. A room temperature that's too warm is a level 2 energy drain. If you're trying to figure out which one of these is hitting you hardest and you want some guidance, feel free to drop a comment below and I'll do my best to respond and give you some advice. Mistake number 2 is using alcohol to wind down. Now, this is another one you've probably also heard about, but I want to make a couple really key points. Alcohol is a sedative, meaning it will help you fall asleep. The problem is it prevents you from getting into deep sleep. So while it may help with that initial sleep onset, it's going to disrupt your ability to recover in the deeper sleep stages. Let me tell you about a client I had who was in his late 40s. He was a finance executive. He'd been having 2 glasses of wine per night for years to help himself fall asleep. And he thought he was sleeping fine, but he couldn't figure out why his energy was getting worse and worse. So I encouraged him to get a Whoop strap so that he could track 1 month worth of data on his sleep. Then we ran a few experiments where instead of using alcohol to wind down, he used magnesium. The data was abundantly clear. His heart rate variability, which is a proxy for recovery, was 15 to 20% lower after alcohol, and he had roughly half the amount of REM sleep on nights when he drank. He was getting the same exact time in bed, but his sleep quality dramatically improved when he cut the alcohol and added magnesium. The fix here is to do a couple of things. 1 is to make sure you're not having more than 1 to 2 drinks maximum. 2 is to try and cut off the alcohol at least 3 hours before bed. Or 3, which is what I'm always preaching to people, is just tell the people you're with you're not drinking. There's nothing we hate more as humans than appearing inconsistent to other humans. So by verbalizing that you're not drinking, you're giving yourself that added accountability to not do so. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but alcohol is a level 3 energy drain. It steals more from today than it delivers for tomorrow, and it is one of those silent destroyers. It might feel like it's helping, it's not. Now, mistake number 1, and this is one of the most common that I find, is not knowing your caffeine tolerance. You've already heard people talk about the need to watch your caffeine intake. It's going to disrupt your sleep. You shouldn't have it after 12. But the truth is, some of the highest performers I work with love their early afternoon caffeine, and they swear it doesn't disrupt their sleep. Here's the math they haven't run. Caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 7 hours. That means if you have a green tea or a coffee at 2 p.m., 50% of that caffeine is still in your system at 9 p.m. And 25% of that caffeine is still circulating in your system at 3 a.m. This is something that I call the caffeine carry. And it's the math that most people never do. You might think that you can drink caffeine later in the day and still fall asleep, but the truth is it's binding to those adenosine receptors and preventing you from getting those deep stages of recovery. I had a client that was absolutely certain this was not his issue. He was only having a coffee at 1 p.m., so we put a cutoff at 10 a.m. and like magic, he was waking up with more energy. The rule here is very simple. Regardless of how much caffeine you're drinking, give yourself a 10 a.m. cutoff. And if you're extra stressed out, cut it off at 9 a.m. This is another level 3 energy drain. It is a silent destroyer, and it is one that a ton of high performers overlook. Here's the shift that actually matters. When it comes to sleep, most people are asking the wrong question. Chances are you're not waking up exhausted because you need more hours of sleep. You're waking up exhausted because your body's not actually getting the quality sleep that it needs to recover fully. My entire mission here is to give you the knowledge, the frameworks, and the protocols that will allow you to skyrocket your health. So if that's what you're looking for, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.